Stephen King's It was both the name of the first horror movie I ever saw and fell in love with as a kid, and the name of my favorite novel that I also discovered and fell in love with as a kid. So it's safe to say that I have a long history with this one, and that's why I was really surprised and delighted to hear that the 1990 TV miniseries was getting a Blu-ray, and it is now out in the US, and I happen to have a little sneak preview of the Blu-ray right here. So this is just going to be a very brief, quick look at the differences between the old DVD version and the new Blu-ray version. I might do a much more in-depth review later when I watch the whole thing and listen to the sound mix, but that one might not be up for a while. So, Stephen King's It, the 1990 miniseries, was a two-parter, and it was shot to be formatted in two different versions. There was a 1:33:1 aspect ratio version, in other words, a full screen version, and there's the 1:85:1 version, in other words, a widescreen version. There was both a full screen and a widescreen version. The DVD had the widescreen version. On TV originally, I think it was formatted for full screen. Back in the 90s, people had, square full screen television sets, but the DVD was formatted for widescreen. Now that it's on Blu-ray, it's back to full screen again, and I'm a little surprised by that. It's a little bit inexplicable. Like, I don't see why we're going back to full screen. People have widescreen 16:9 television sets these days. It's 2016. I get the sort of integrity of the original full screen presentation, but I would have preferred the widescreen version. So that's a difference straight away. Also, it was always two parts, right? There was part one and there was part two, and now it's just a single 3-hour-long movie. But there's a thing to take note of here that's true for both the DVD and the Blu-ray, and I think this is really interesting. The end of part one on both the DVD and the Blu-ray ends with a scream, right? Stan Yers is found in the bathtub and there's a scream. And both of these versions fade out almost instantly. She begins to scream and then it just fades out instantly, except on the Blu-ray now it fades back into part two immediately. You don't have to flip the disc or do anything like that. But I could have sworn that when I was a kid and I saw this on TV or had it on VHS, that scream went on for longer, and I think it even cut back to the bloody word "it" on the tiles, and then you had the end credits. The end credits for part one don't exist anymore. They're not there on the DVD, they're not there on the Blu-ray, and the scene doesn't end, it just fades immediately. Am I crazy, or did this end differently? In fact, if someone out there still has a VHS recording of Stephen King's It from when it was on television, will you check that out for me? Will you watch part one for me? Go to the ending. If you have it recorded, look it up. How does it end? How does part one end? How does the scene go? And does it fade immediately? Or, describe the scene to me, because I remember the scene being very different. The good thing about the Blu-ray, though, is that it was shot on film, and you can tell. It looks much better. There's a lot more detail in the image, a lot more clarity. The colors are a lot bolder and brighter than they ever were on the DVD. I've got some comparison pictures here to give you an idea. I didn't grab the exact same frames in all of these, so it's just to give you kind of a basic idea of the difference. And again, you'll notice that you gain a little bit of information vertically, that is to say kind of on the top and bottom, but you lose some of that widescreen information on the sides there, so you can kind of see the difference here between the old DVD and the Blu-ray. So it's a mixed bag, really. I really would have preferred to have a Blu-ray with both parts that you could play separately, that were completely intact in widescreen, with both opening credits and end credits for both. even if you go on IMDb, you can actually see that the television version is about 5 minutes longer than the DVD version, and that's because they truncated the opening credits of part 2 and the end credits of part 1, and I swear on my life they faded that scene early. I think it goes on for at least a couple of seconds more, if I'm not crazy, you know. Maybe it's just maybe I've created a false memory in my head, but I think that scene goes on for longer. I remember it being very harrowing as a kid. It was very intense and frightening. So give me your opinion on this, and if anybody has, you know, a VHS recording of Stephen King's It, I'd love to see how part 1 ends. Would be very, very interested in that. I remember having a VHS tape myself from when I was a kid. I would have been about 5 or 6 years old. I was a really young kid when I saw this for the first time, and I actually wrote on the tape when I could barely write. I wrote "It the Clown," like horribly misspelled and everything, but I cherished that tape. I loved it. It was my first ever horror movie, and it was awesome. Maybe my parents should have been more cautious about letting me watch something like that, but I'm glad they did, because, you know, it made me the person I am today, and it gave me a love of horror, a love of Stephen King, and just remains to this day. It's going to be very interesting to see the whole thing, watch the whole 3-hour thing, and you know, get a sense of the image quality and the sound mix and all that. And when I've seen the whole thing, I can come back and do a full review for you guys. But this is just to give you an idea of what it used to look like, what it looks like now, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. Alright, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.